Here's something I've watched happen more times than I'd like to admit. A property starts to underperform, visits are down, the team is restless, and leadership wants to do something, and somewhere in that conversation, not always right away, but eventually, a rebrand lands on the table. Because a rebrand feels like momentum. It's visible and it's decisive. It tells the market something is changing. But here's what I've learned. Momentum and direction are not the same thing. And in most cases, what's driving the underperformance isn't the brand at all. It's the execution. It's offer. It's experience. And a new logo isn't going to fix any of that. It's going to actually surface it. So today, before the agency gets the call, we're going to work through the diagnostic. Welcome to Drive Time Marketing. Hi there, and welcome back to Drive Time Marketing, the show where we help casino marketers turn strategy into action and insights into impact. I'm Julia Carcamo, and in today's episode, I'm talking about one of the most expensive decisions in regional casino marketing and how to know whether you're making it for the right reasons. We're getting into the casino rebrand decision, when it's right to make the call, when it's absolutely is not right, and how to tell the difference before you've committed the capital. Let's get into it. I want to start somewhere that might surprise you. Rebrands are sometimes exactly the answer. I'm not anti-rebrand. In fact, I'm loving brands, but I'm anti-wrong rebrand. So let's name the legitimate triggers because they exist. The clearest one is an ownership change with a genuine strategic reset. When a property is acquired and the new owner is repositioning, not just painting the walls, but changing the purpose, the guest target, the experience, the operation, the brand has to follow that work. I want to be careful here though, because the order matters. The strategic and operational reset comes first. The brand reflects it. A new owner who rebrands on day one before any of the operational changes are in place is doing marketing theater. Another legitimate trigger, a major amenity expansion that the brand genuinely can't describe anymore. Maybe it's a hotel tower or an entertainment venue, a dining program that repositions the experience. If guests walk in and what they find doesn't match what the brand promised, that's a real misalignment worth addressing. But again, the experience leads and the brand follows. And when there's genuine market repositioning, new competition that changes the regional landscape, a demographic shift in your drive market, a strategic decision to go after a different guest profile. These can create real reasons to reconsider how your property is positioned and presented. In every one of those cases, the rebrand is a response to something that has already changed or is changing in a deliberate, operationally committed way. It's not the thing that creates the change. That distinction is everything. Now, changing the logo doesn't change the brand. The brand is what your guests experience, what your staff delivers, and what your operation consistently produces. A rebrand without that foundation is a name change, nothing more. So if a reason for a legitimate rebrand exists, why do so many operators end up with rebrands they didn't actually need? Well, the answer is almost always the same. A rebrand conversation starts with the proposed solution, not the diagnosis. Someone says, I think we need a rebrand, and the room moves toward whether that's a good idea rather than whether that's the right answer to the actual problem. What's missing is the discipline that separates the symptom from the cause. And in my experience, when operators think they have a brand problem, the root cause almost always traces back to one of three things. First is an execution problem. The brand promise exists, marketing is communicating it, but what guests experience on the floor doesn't match what the brand says they'll get. Slow service, a loyalty program that's complicated to use, staff interactions that feel transactional, environmental inconsistencies that quietly signal we don't sweat the details. I think of this as the iceberg problem. The logo, the colors, and the signage, that's the part above the waterline. Below it is everything that actually delivers the brand, how your hosts speak to guests, the ease of cashing out, the cleanliness of the floor, the responsiveness of your programs. When the below the waterline work isn't right, a new logo doesn't help. It raises expectations the operation can meet. A rebrand on top of an unresolved execution problem makes things worse, not better. The second root cause is an offer problem. Your reinvestment isn't hitting the right segments. Your loyalty tiers don't give regulars a compelling reason to consolidate their play with you rather than splitting it with the property down the road. These problems look like brand problems because they show up in the same place: visit frequency, revenue per visit, guest satisfaction. But you don't fix a reinvestment strategy by changing your name. You fix it by doing the database work. The third root cause is an experience problem. Your guests have a good time, or at least a fine time, but fine isn't a reason to drive past a competitor. If the experience doesn't give regulars something to feel about your property specifically, they'll distribute their visits based on convenience and offer, not loyalty. A rebrand can support a repositioned experience. It can't create one. The experience has to change first. Now I want to give you a tool for finding your root cause, one I picked up from someone who was very good at asking hard questions. When I was at Isle of Capri Casinos, I had the privilege of working with Jim Perry, who was chairman of the board. Jim had a habit that I've been using in brand conversations ever since. When a problem hit the table, he didn't accept the first explanation. He asked why. Then he asked why again. And he kept going until he got the real answer, not the presenting symptoms. Usually 5 times. It sounds simple, but it isn't, because in most organizations, the presenting symptom is all anyone wants to talk about. And the presenting symptom almost never leads you to the right solution. Let me show you what it looks like in practice. Let's say the symptom on the table is guests aren't visiting often enough. So you ask why. Well, our promotions don't seem to be pulling like they used to. Why? Well, we're running the same offers we've always run. The calendar's starting to feel stale. Why? Well, we haven't done a real review of our reinvestment strategy in a few years. Why? We've been focused on operational issues and haven't had the bandwidth. Why? Well, we lost 2 people in the database team and never fully replaced that capability. That's not a brand problem. That's a database and reinvestment strategy problem. And a rebrand wouldn't have touched it, not by a mile. You could have spent 6 figures on a new name and logo, and your guests still wouldn't be coming back more often. Run the 5 whys on whatever symptom is driving the rebrand conversation at your property. If you land on a root cause that a rebrand would actually fix, great, keep going. If you land somewhere else, you've just saved yourself a significant capital investment and a lot of organizational disruption. Now I want to talk to you about the rebrand triggers that feel legitimate until you look at them a little more closely. Let's say a competitor refreshed their look. This is the single most common bad reason to rebrand. Your competitor updated their logo and colors, and suddenly the rebrand conversation is on the calendar. But here's the reality. Their refresh changes their visual presentation, not their competitive position. Reacting to their aesthetics with your own rebrand doesn't differentiate you. It just puts 2 properties running from the same starting line. The only question worth asking is whether they've done something that actually changes guest perception. And usually they haven't. How about new leadership wanting a fresh start? Leadership transitions create energy, and that energy is real and worth channeling. But a rebrand as a signal of a new era is capital spent on internal communication. Your guests don't care who's in the GM office. They care whether the experience has changed. If new leadership wants to make a mark, let them make it through operational improvement and guest experience investment. That's legacy. A logo change is a footnote. Or how about when the brand feels tired? Well, you have to ask yourself, tired to whom? This is the question no one asks. Your team sees the logo every single day, more than once a day. Your regulars see it twice a week, even if it's that much. Brand fatigue inside the building is not a guest perception problem. Before you invest capital solving for internal boredom, make sure there's an actual external problem to solve. And then there's my personal favorite, the agency pitched it. And don't get me wrong, I love some agencies. But agencies present rebrands as solutions because rebrands are significant projects. That's not cynicism, it's a structural reality. A good agency will tell you honestly if you need something else. But a rebrand proposal from a partner who hasn't deeply assessed your guest data, your operations, and your actual competitive position is a pitch. And you should evaluate it as one. So now let's assume you've run the 5 whys, you've examined the root cause honestly, and the rebrand conversation is still on the table. Before you commit, I want you to walk through 7 other questions. 1, has your customer profile actually shifted in your data, not in your gut? And 2, does your current brand genuinely fail to describe what your property offers today? 3rd, is there a real gap between how guests describe the experience and how your team describes it? Because if there is, that's a delivery problem and not a brand problem. 4, has a competitor fundamentally repositioned, not just refreshed their look? 5, if leadership changed, is the driver strategic repositioning or preference? 6, is operations leadership aligned in the room from day one? Because a rebrand without operational alignment produces a new logo on top of an unchanged guest experience. And that's not a rebrand, that's signage. 7, is your team genuinely prepared for operational change, not just visual change? A real rebrand changes how your property runs, not just how it looks. If you answer no or not sure to more than 2 of those, the rebrand isn't ready. Something else may be, though, and that something else might solve the actual problem faster, at a lower cost, and with a lot less disruption. If you're not sure what you're working with, the Brand Audit Checklist is a good starting point. It's a free download in the Casino Marketing Toolkit collection at our website, jcarcamoassociates.com. I'll drop a link in the show notes for you. This episode is part of a series on the casino rebrand decision. Last week, we covered a full strategic process for operators who are ready to move forward and what it actually takes to execute a rebrand well, from the strategic work that has to happen before any visual to the internal launch that has to precede the external one. That's at jcarcamoassociates.com/casino-rebrand-strategy-guide. And I will include the link in the show notes if you didn't catch that. Next week, we're going to tackle the question that sits right between those two. If a rebrand is warranted, how do you know whether you need a full rebrand or a refresh, or maybe just a repositioning? Those are different projects with different scopes, different costs, and different timelines, and we're going to map it out. For now, if your property is in a rebrand conversation, take the diagnostic seriously before the agency gets the call. The full framework is on our website, and I will include the link in the show notes. And if you want a thought partner before you commit, a brand kickstart call is a good place to start, and that link will also be in the show notes. Thank you for riding along today. If this one made you think differently, share it with someone who needs to hear it before their next rebrand meeting. Until next time, I'm Julia Carcamo.